everybody, and welcome to the FTW podcast, the wrestling world in all its laughable glory. My name is Harrison, and with me, as always, is Joe. Say hello, Joe.
What?
Rob. Say hello, Rob.
Hey.
And Garvin is manning the boards. Tonight is episode 130, coming to you live on September 4th, 2012. And on tonight's show, we talk TNA, WWE, and yes, even ECW with professional movie filmy guy John Philapavage. We'll have him on later. It'll be fantastic. First up, if you're new to the show, check out theftwpodcast.com for more about us and how to get involved in tonight's show, as well as upcoming shows. You can reach out to us on Twitter, Facebook, voicemail, text message, email, smoke signal, carrier pigeon, however you can get it to us. All those links and information is listed there, so check it out, ftwpodcast.com. We record every Tuesday night at 8 on ftwlive.com. Hope to see you there. But first, we have to talk about the draft and how brutally we are kicking the listeners' asses. Oh, yeah, baby. You want to know how bad you guys are losing? The top 5 teams, which are Lee, Mike, Connor, Rob, and Scott, all team FTW. 112 points to 91. Boom. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, wait. Connor is an FTW. No, he's a listener. Whatever. Anyway, top 4 out of the 5, all us. Top 5 wrestlers are Sheamus, Ryback, R-Truth, Kofi.
I don't even know what the hell division the teams are in.
Connor could go either way. He's been on the show. And Antonio Cesaro, which is really surprising. Tied with ADR for 9.5. My thing is, I dropped Madison Rayne for ODB when she came back on Thursday, and I got a bone to pick with Garvin because I asked him explicitly on Twitter during the show, can I make a trade? And he ignored me. ODB squashed Madison Rayne. I lost out on 3 points. And
no, you have to declare the freaking...
Okay.
No, you're being too polite. You just say, I'm trading A for B. And it's at that point, timestamp, you're done. You're in.
Okay, I am respecting Garvin's time because he was look. I don't
Why?
know
No one else does.
I don't know what he's doing at home watching Impact. He'd be pants off, enjoying the dogs, and exactly. And I don't want to interrupt him in the middle of that. I want to, politely edge the, knock on the door. Hey, Garv, is it okay if I make a trade? And he never said anything, and I lost out on 3 points. So I would be 3 points higher. So. I'm kind of bummed. But, Joe, you dropped, you made a trade, didn't you?
I dropped Devon since he left TNA, and I picked up Eric Young.
Who's done nothing.
Hey.
Oh, he just came back.
It's not going to get any points for Devon, just sitting there with no title. I'm unemployed. Yeah, I don't get points for his unemployment check.
This is true, but there wasn't anybody in TNA left?
There was another trade I considered, but I wasn't going to mention it.
Eric Young,
basically, because then Harrison followed up and picked it up, so, hey.
Well, I think it's a solid trade. It's just Eric Young, ODB, they just came back. I mean, I'm looking at ODB just because she kind of, Madison Rayne was being groomed to be the next TNA Knockouts champion, and then she just got squashed by ODB in a matter of, minutes. So I'm like, oh, I am picking that up. So hopefully she sticks around because she is seriously the only probably pro wrestler in the world that I am genuinely scared of. All right, so we got reaction to episode 129 from last week. Lou2 wins. Says the Aces and Eights talker, the big fat guy that's in the middle of the screen all the time, has a VP patch and he's not the leader. I didn't notice a VP patch. This isn't because last week I mentioned that, or it might have been on Wrestling with Beer that we had on Saturday. That my problem with the Aces and Eights AJ thing is that there is no defined leader as far as the Aces and Eights are concerned. I think it would be really strong. Yeah, it was on Wrestling with Beer. I thought the storyline would be a lot stronger if we had the Aces and Eights, the guy who's always talking. I think, guys, you ready to have some fun tonight? Had a colored mask or something. But he's got a VP patch. I don't know how you can tell that. Does it actually say VP on it? Does anybody... Rob, have you noticed this?
No, I haven't. I've noticed that a few of them have, prospect patches on there, but that was seemingly... apparently taken care of when they came down and got their asses handed to them by Sting and some of the other TNA wrestlers and said, hey, thanks for beating the crap out of us. You just made us members of Aces and Eights.
Yeah, I got patched in. All right. I just didn't know if there was something specific with that. So if he's not the leader, then, well, I guess that's a swerve that's coming that could be interesting. Gary from Facebook wrote in. Now, keep in mind, he's British. So, hey, guys, thanks for laughs Saturday evening with drinking with beer. Harrison, after the show finished, did you finish the ale or not? And also, Lee, does your mom know you were drinking? I was drink while watching it. I was drinking Bud. He's British, so...
Wait. So he's drinking Bud? He's drinking Budweiser.
No, I think
What?
he's saying I'm drinking friend, but I don't think Bud is a word in England.
I don't
But
know. And our token British guy isn't here, so...
Yeah, so we can't answer that. No, I did not think that Boddington's... What was it? Boddington's? Whatever that was, it was awful. I tried chugging it at the end of the show. I got halfway down the glass. It was terrible. It was just absolutely awful. I had 3 cans.
You didn't try to chug it. You're a pussy.
Okay, fine, Joe. I'll bring some up. You can try and chug it. That stuff tastes like watered down. It tastes like watered down Miller Lite. It was.
I'll slam it. I accept the challenge. What? But if I do it, I get to, and in one sitting, I get to slap you.
Where?
Wherever we're at drinking this beer, I'm gonna slap you right in the face. In the face.
Okay.
Face.
All right, so that's the reaction to last slap his face.
I'm gonna slap the face in your face.
From the chat says Vice President. It's on his jacket, his right, our left, as far as the VP of the Aces and Eights. And it says, if you help watch Sons of Anarchy, you know what you're looking for. Okay, that might help. I haven't had a chance to see
right,
that.
so we know who's booking TNA now. It's the guys writing Sons of Anarchy. Got it.
Apparently.
It's a storyline that, Aces and Eights is kind of ripped right from that show, from what I understand, so I can understand it. Maybe not entirely, but it's at least inspired. Anyway, Superstars. The only thing the 2 things that are interesting about, 3 matches on Superstars. Ryback defeating Johnny Curtis. Ryback got a decent push. Primo and Epico defeating the Usos. So again, we're getting the tag divisions kind of lit up a little bit with Primo and Epico getting a little bit of a push over the Usos. Don't know how you feel about that. That's kind of a personal taste thing. But my big thing about Superstars is Jinder Mahal beats Alex Riley. And then on Raw, he loses to Ryback in essentially a squash match. Which I thought
Spoilers!
All right, fine. Spoilers. But I think it's kind of weird because Ryback, to me, became really interesting when Jinder Mahal was feuding with him. And then they have Jinder Mahal win on Superstars, arguably the main event, and lose. Squash match. He was down in 7 minutes. I just don't get it. I guess you just build him up on Superstars and then squash him back down on Raw? Does that seem weird to anybody else?
No, not at all. I think that if you take Jinder Mahal and you build him on Superstars, you're still building him as a solid mid-carder. He just happens to lose to the guy they're actually pushing.
That's fair. Chat posted this Chat posted this saying FTW should hold a Twitter poll. You tweet us with hashtag slap for a slap fight between Harrison and Joe. Hashtag FTW chug for a speed chug contest between Harrison and Joe. Joe would win that one. And hashtag FTW hug for Harrison and Joe to hug it out, which I think would be fun. I miss hugging Joe. Joe gives good hugs. He's like a big bear of a man.
I give good a lot of things.
All right, so let's go to Impact. Rob, quality show from Impact. What was the standout moment for you that you thought was absolutely amazing?
I've got to say it was probably Samoa Joe and AJ Styles. The match between these two was awesome. It was just there's really not enough good things I can say about this match.
Oh, it was pay-per-view quality match of the month. It was amazing to see.
Yeah, these two have had a rivalry pretty much since TNA began. When you put it in the frame of the Bound for Glory series tournament, that raised the stakes even higher. And they really know how to work with each other in the ring. They went back and forth. You really didn't know who was going to win until the match ended.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. The EY is back. Hey,
hell yeah!
It only took him 3 months to get ODB her fried chicken and beer.
Hey man, when you got to get quality fried chicken and beer, you got to get good quality fried chicken and beer.
See, I thought fried chicken and beer was a euphemism for sex, and then she actually said sex, and so I was like, wait, actual fried chicken and beer? That's kind of lame.
Yeah,
you've never seen the ODB character, have you, Harrison?
No, I have. That's why I was like, fried chicken and beer is like some kind of weird sex act, but it wasn't. It was actually fried chicken and beer.
And EY shows up with fried chicken,
And beer. Yeah, it was weird. It was just, I was not expecting that. I was like, oh, I thought this would be dirtier. Okay. There's something wholesome about that. He ran an errand for his wife. You gotta like it. I mean,
And it only took him 3 months.
it took him 3 months. Well, what's that show he was doing?
Smart man.
Well, it's because
Out
of
of the house. Well, you can.
yeah, well, it's because of that show he was doing. James Storm, RVD, other really good match. Right,
yeah,
yeah.
It was. This would be one of those matches that this is one of those matches that actually kind of irks me about RVD a little bit, because you look at most of his matches and it's like, okay, he's run out of gas, his career is winding down. And then you see a match like this with James Storm where he steps it up, delivers a great match, and it's like, why doesn't he do this more often?
Yeah, RVD too. It was pretty impressive all around. Chat's saying I like Samoa Joe and the return of ODB and EY back to the ring again. Yeah, me too, because I got ODB now. RVD versus Storm was match of the night. Nah, Samoa Joe and AJ, sorry. And AJ should work on his submission moves. I don't know. I mean, I can see that. I still think AJ did really well. I mean, it wasn't spectacular, but it wasn't like he botched anything.
Right. He didn't botch anything. It worked in the story of the match. AJ Styles needed 10 points. He tried to go for submission against a wrestler who's a submission expert, and it backfired on him. It was part of the great story that the match told.
Yeah, exactly. Hardy versus Angle. I gotta be honest, I was really impressed with Hardy. I thought Hardy and Angle did a great match. Again, I mean, it was a great show.
It was probably the best match I've seen from Jeff Hardy in years.
No, that's not fair. He's done some pretty good stuff. Moving on.
But I don't agree with the decision. I really wanted to see Angle win that match, and I think it would have been better for the tournament if he had.
Okay. Now, gut check. We have our first elimination officially. Chris Louis surprises nobody because, I mean, really, you, me, Joe, Garvin, our entire chat last week, Twitter was exploding saying they really should not hire this guy. I don't think anybody in the little FTW universe said they should bring this guy on in any capacity. So, I mean, what do you think? Do you see this guy coming back in the future? I mean, do you see?
I kind of think so. I mean, as I looked at the situation, I found myself kind of agreeing with Taz, and maybe Bruce Pritchard had said this too. He has a great story. Louis got a story that makes it easy for him to identify with the fans, and that he's got a hard life, so on and ever. He's got character background that you can build on, but the moves just aren't there yet. I mean, it's like I said last week. The guy's not even good enough for Ohio Valley Wrestling.
Hey, come on! You don't have to say it with such condescension because it's in Ohio. Or it's in the area of Ohio.
No, I'm saying if he's not good enough for a developmental Fed, he's obviously not good enough to be in TNA.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so here's the thing. Oh, I'm sorry. One last point, then I want to ask you.
The judges seem to have the judges seem to say the same thing. I mean, Taz was right there. Like, yeah, sorry, dude, you don't have the moves for it. Maybe later. Bruce Pritchard was meaner than I was. Yeah, maybe you should wake up from the dream of being a pro wrestler.
Yeah, I
was just like, wow.
Damn. Yeah, that was pretty impressive when he busted that one out. Okay, so Joey Ryan had a blowhorn and called out Al Snow. Diva Jill on Twitter, one of our esteemed fans, brought up a really great point. Open fight night, Al Snow calls out Joey Ryan.
I want to see that.
Right?
I totally want to see Al Snow come out and say, "All right, you little bitch, get out here."
Yeah, open fight night, bring him out. I don't know if it really works if you're not
the mustache off your face.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. We've got Anchorman 2 coming out soon, so maybe Joey Ryan's gonna get a bush.
But at the same point in time, while we're still focused on storylines and everything, technically, Joey Ryan was refused a contract also, even though we know that right, behind the scenes he was hired and everything, but technically Gutchuk has now had 2 refusals.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so Chet's saying Angle we've lost BFG anyways, so it doesn't really matter that he didn't make it very far beyond Thursday. I'm pretty sure Louis Suckatu was at least partially at work, so I'm pretty sure we could see him at some point in the future. I don't know about. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from with that one. It's kind of in the back of your head where you're like, this was a little too convenient, but yeah, that's true. Louis did have a gut, to check, which I thought was that's pretty funny. And Bruce shocked me with what he said. I'd expect that from Taz and not Brother Love. That's fair. We got our final 5 for Bound for Glory. RVD, Joe, Storm, Bully, and Hardy. One of them will be eliminated. And last thing we got to talk about, Rob. End of the show, real quick before we move on. Basically a Xerox from the week before. Do you think they're in a holding pattern until we get to No Surrender?
I think so. It looks like they're really not keen to reveal too much more about the aces and eights until we get to the pay-per-view or something. So
even if the masks keep accidentally coming off.
And the guys have to turn at the light. It was weird.
Puts it back on. Yeah, it was one of those things where it's like,
weird.
Guys,
one
double-sided tape.
Is actually putting the mask. Dude, you dropped your mask.
It's like,
seriously?
Come on, man. Yeah, I mean, runway models, double-sided tape, dude. This stuff's been figured out. So anyway, quality. I mean, personally for me, one of the best impacts in a while. This show, TNA's putting on quality stuff lately, and this Impact was so good. All right, SmackDown. Joe, favorite moment about SmackDown was it Primetime Players defeating Gabriel and Kidd?
Primetime Players defeating Gabriel and Kidd was a great match. Although Orton versus Dolph, I think really took it. I like seeing Dolph work with guys like Orton. It's giving Orton something to do, and I really think it could be a somewhat passing of a torch here with Orton being like the legend killer, or at least was the legend killer. Mm-hmm. He had a lot of accolades put on him. I like this feud that's coming up between Dolph and Orton. You're seeding it now, and then once Dolph ends up cashing in and winning, then you've got a whole nother branch of storyline to go to.
Yeah, the only problem is Orton's taking time off to do a movie.
Yeah, that's fine. He can feud with him now, and then Dolph can put him out.
That'd be nice. He's got that movie, whatever it is, 12 rounds or something that he's doing. So I'm looking forward to seeing Orton act. Oh, at least acting where I'm assuming he's the main character. Because in the other movie he was in, he wasn't, and it was just, he was so wooden. He was exactly how Orton would. He did exactly as well as you would think someone like him would do in a situation like that. So I'm curious to see how he'll do, main headlining a movie.
Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay.
I didn't know where else to go with that one. Sorry. My lows of the show, Caitlyn defeating Natalya. I don't like Caitlyn.
Yeah, here's the thing. There's a rumor going around that it was an accident that she won and that she shouldn't be the number one contender. Do you give credence to that?
No. I think Caitlyn was supposed to win.
So you say Caitlyn was supposed to win, but it was just a crap match.
Yeah, it's a crap match. I think Caitlyn's a good worker.
Well, that's the thing. Caitlyn's a good worker. Natalya's a pretty good worker. I don't understand why this one didn't work. Yeah,
I don't think Caitlyn is a good worker.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think Natalya is. So, the only other interesting thing to me in the show was, the thing that pissed me off was Rey Mysterio beating Cody Rhodes, just because of the draft. I need more points. And Sheamus beat Damian Sandow by countout. I like Sandow working with Sheamus. I really do. Yeah.
All right.
I like Sandow a lot. So.
Yeah, we're huge fans of Sandow on the show. I just think, I just don't think Sheamus is really the best pick for him because Sandow's such a straight-laced. Well, I guess it does kind of work. Sandow's such a straight-laced guy, and Sheamus is kind of like they're kind of making him into this frat boy character, which is so annoying. But I guess it could work. I'd like to see where it goes with the story, because it can't have Sheamus versus ADR forever. Maybe they can. Who knows?
I don't know. They could. I think that'd be boring as fuck, especially if you have a title involved. I don't think. If they're going to keep going with it past this pay-per-view, they need to just. Dolph needs a title. Make it a grudge match between those two and let Dolph take the title and do something interesting. I don't care who he feuds with. You could feud him with Swagger, since Swagger apparently is saying he's going to take some time off. Maybe he turns
which is good
and brings the pain.
Yeah, well, yeah, that'd be interesting. How do you think Booker T's doing with the GM job?
I think he's doing as well as can be expected. I mean, he's still using he's still using Teddy Long to go out there and do tag matches or whatnot. Teddy Long just all of a sudden comes out there and he's like the voice of authority. And he's like, "You two are in a match now."
And it's a tag team match. Nothing beats when he gives that pause before saying, "Randy Orton."
Yeah, playa? He likes to do that, playa. Holla holla.
I'm just glad he's still on TV because he is the best dresser on the WWE roster, hands down.
Well, he is now after Slick's gone.
Hell yeah.
The doctor is Stizile.
No, man, he is hands down best dresser. No, I'm not reading that from the chat. I'm not, because we got so much. The
chat's a Sheamus Cena 2.0. No,
come on, we got so much crap for that.
No, I don't agree with you guys.
Chat said, okay, here it is. This is the crux of the matter with Caitlyn. Chat saying, I rewatched the end of the Divas Battle Royale. This is probably Diva Jill who's saying this. When Caitlyn knocked out Eve, it did look like Eve was supposed to flip over and land on her feet on the apron.
Yeah. But they're starting. Yeah. It looks like they're starting to turn Layla a little bit. No, turn her a little heel. Turn Layla a little bit heel. So if anything, you're gonna see Caitlyn take the title, and then I think Eve's playing the good girl role right now just to sweeten the pot. Because you see, Caitlyn and Layla are like, "Oh yeah, yay! It's gonna be two friends fighting each other, yay!" Queef. I think she's trying to get in on that. Like, oh, I'm going to be nice too, so that I can get a title shot, kind of like Daniel Bryan. How he was
yeah, I can see that. I just think that it's just one of those things where, if that's the case, I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting pivot by WWE to be able to, kind of say, okay, well, now we're stuck with Caitlyn. Let's see what she can do. And I mean, they're at least trying. I mean, it's not like they wrote it off the next week and have, it's Eve's like, well, I get a revenge match, and if I beat you, I'm the number one contender, and then just basically squashes Caitlyn. So, at least they're making that pivot. So, good on WWE for that.
But on the whole, it was a decent SmackDown as they've been going lately. I've been a little disillusioned by them lately, so I think they're, show-wise, they're moving in the right direction.
Okay, cool. Now on to Raw. Raw, except for the last 5 minutes, was forgettable. In fact, here's the thing. Rob, you there?
Yes.
Here we go. I'm making a bet with you. If I beat you in the draft, we got to switch. Because if Raw is going to keep doing this downward slide, I don't want to review it anymore. I don't want to review Impact.
You want to review SmackDown instead, and I'll take Raw?
No, I don't want to review SmackDown. Because then I have to watch Sci-Fi.
No, you don't. You have to DVR it. You can fast forward through all the commercials and shit.
Yeah, that's like Friday.
Like I said, you DVR it. You don't even have to watch it. I don't.
Harrison, last time you said you were going to watch Impact and review it, you were gone for like a month.
Yeah, I was busy. I had stuff to do, Rob. The big highlights of Raw was the last 5 minutes. Miz on commentary was awesome, and we got the eternal question, that eternal answer to the question: if Cole is by himself, is it terrible? And it's not that it's terrible; it's just that it's not as good as when he's got someone there. Miz, when he first came out, was really wooden, and you could tell he had his talking points that he was supposed to hit, right off the top, with Race and Cara and Rhodes and Tensai. I mean, he was very, here are my points. I gotta hit these. I'm repeating exactly what's in my ear, that type of thing. But as the night wore on, especially when I came out, that's when the doors came off, and Miz was just more of himself. Although you could tell, if Miz he's not going to be as great as he was. Chet saying he was hilarious. As great as he was, he's not going to be a regular commentary team until he can kind of rein back the idea that he's one step away from just going, this shit is so weird. Like I'm
really hoping Stryker gets to step up into that role.
Yes.
Because Stryker, like Punk, like Miz, once you kind of loosen him up, is great and very entertaining on commentary.
Mm-hmm.
I would really like to see that. I think Cole did a great job, but I think Cole was playing more of the face.
Yeah,
at that
well,
point.
yeah, but Cole was doing like the thing. Rob, I know you hate Cole because he doesn't have an encyclopedic knowledge of wrestling moves, but he still did an admirable job doing what an announcer does, pushing storylines, pushing the match, yeah, I mean, he was doing a great job of being the play-by-play guy. Not as good as
Yeah,
JR, but
I
just go on.
yeah, I admit that. Cole does a great job. He's learned to do his own thing. I prefer somebody like JR or Mike Tenay who has a knowledge of wrestling, who can break wrestling down into moves and everything. But since I know a decent portion of that stuff myself anyways, I don't need an announcer to do that for me.
Yeah,
And Cole
But
is
you're
really
not
good at
everybody.
telling a story.
But
yeah,
you're not every fan.
yeah, that's the other thing too. So, no, I thought Cole did a really good job with it. I mean, yeah, he was playing the play-by-play guy. Miz was kind of doing color commentary. Miz versus Lay, I loved it because all I could think about it is that I thought it was funny that this guy from Cleveland is feuding with this shrill, effeminate Brit, and I thought that's interesting. I mean, that's kind of what my Tuesday nights are like. Hello?
Oh, we thought you dropped again.
You gotta be kidding me.
Yeah, you're downloading recipes again. Yeah.
All right. Anyway, yeah, Miz did all right. The other thing is, the rest of the show was just kind of, I mean, Kane, Daniel Bryan, anger management wasn't as funny as last week. The hug it out thing, I didn't want to see him hug. I wanted to see him tag, but just because you get one doesn't mean you're going to get the other. So,
I really wanted to see Kane's drawing. I wanted to see him have a drawing. I really did.
oh, and it turns out it's just a blank piece of paper. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
and
was
then he just
kinda lame.
burns it.
Yeah, that was one of those things. It's like, oh, yeah, an opportunity there. I guess they figured that no matter what they put on there, it's never going to be as funny as they could. The other thing is AJ. I mean, first, like Chet saying, completely buried Striker. Yeah, absolutely buried Striker throughout the show, which I wasn't a fan of because, like I said, like Joe said, Striker stepping up and being side by side with Cole would be amazing. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the Cole Striker team, especially on pay-per-views. They do a phenomenal job. Here's the other thing. Chet saying really disappointed by the AJ Vicky segment. I was hoping that AJ would take the don't lay hands on employees extremely literally and use the chair instead. Yeah, I just thought it was kind of one of those things where it's like they weren't really doing. Watching crazy be crazy isn't interesting. Watching crazy think they know what they're doing is incredibly interesting. And
Yeah, see. Oh,
that's
go
what they
ahead.
were doing. Yeah, that's what they were doing during Punk, Kane, Brandy O'Brien. The thing that made AJ awesome was the fact that, yeah, she was crazy, but she thought she knew what she was doing. So that becomes instantly compelling. Not anymore. Now that she's throwing a tantrum in the ring, it's like, oh, she's crazy. Done. There's no extra layer that makes me want to tune in next week to see how it turns out. I'm just like, oh, that was crap. I don't really care now what happens next.
Yeah,
Joe?
I don't know. Well, I don't know who it was, and I was sorry. I was looking for this tweet here. Somebody made a comment about the AJ Vicky thing where Vicky was sitting in the middle of the ring, and they're like, "Oh dear God, for the hard camera, please don't uncross your legs, Vicky." Who was that? I want to say it was Lee, but
Probably.
God only knows. So what was your question?
Do you? I mean, is the
I'm
idea?
sorry. I've been doing this to you like for about a month on end now.
Yeah, I know. It's okay. You've been doing it since WrestleMania. So AJ, crazy, just general crazy in the ring. Not as compelling as an AJ thinks she knows what she's doing.
It's kind of yeah. I would no. I think crazy, just being crazy in the ring, I think works better than her looking like she has that she's got like a definite plan. I liked now that
Really?
it's coming out of my mouth, I'm kind of kicking myself in the nuts.
That's what she said. That's what she said. Yeah. Go
Your
on.
mom said no, but no. I think when she looks like she's like maniacal and like really fucking with people's heads, then it works. But I was fine with her like going after Vicky.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with that. I thought it'd be interesting, like Chad was saying, literally use the chair. Like, it didn't lay her hands on
Oh,
it.
that would have been brilliant.
Yeah, it's a silly cop out, but it would have been interesting where it's like, okay, cool. I mean, she would have gotten over, is the point. Chad saying Miz was amazing during Hug It Out. Yeah, Miz really stepped up his game during that because he kept talking about all the rules that they had to follow when they were doing it. No, you got to embrace, you got to hug.
How do you know the rules? I'm making up as I go, and it just kept going.
Yeah, that was pretty good. You can tell Miz. He just would be a terrible color commentator because he just doesn't know how to rein it in and kind of toe the company line. He would just be on his own thing. Um, and Kane Bryan was hilarious. Kane Bryan was funny. It just wasn't as funny as last week. And I mean, if they're gonna keep doing, I don't know, if they're gonna keep doing the anger management thing, I don't think they're doing those segments anymore because they are now in the ring. I don't know. I mean, I would just expect a little bit more. I mean, they're kind of beating up on the black guy a lot, and yeah, it's funny, but now it's like, all right, let's move on. AJ Lee as GM is a major fail. No, just this week, it's just she can do it. It's just all she's got to be is GM. GM is just a mouthpiece for booking. That's all it is. So whatever. All right, time to move on. Now, normally we'd be doing Ask FTW, where you submit the questions, we submit the answers. Each one of us gets 30 seconds, and then we scream at each other. But today, kids, we got a very special treat for you. We have an interview with John Philapavage, the guy who's doing the ECW documentary that you've read all over the interwebs, especially on Kickstarter. So if you want to do us a favor, John, you want to say hi to everybody?
Hey, everybody.
Okay, first off, just give us a quick brief for people who haven't checked out the Kickstarter and haven't really, gotten the real history about it. If you could just give us a brief on why you started it and why we should support it and that type of thing, just feel free to go right ahead.
Oh, that's a big ego question. Obviously, it's because it's the best documentary ever, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No. Other than that.
No, well, we started it in March of 2000. I've been a wrestling fan since I was probably 5 or 6 years old back in the 80s. I got into ECW in the mid-90s, and I wanted to document it. My first idea was like really crappy. I just wanted to do like a fan thing about going to the ECW arena. But then when I got, I think my third interview was Todd Gordon, who was the founder. And by that point, I wanted to do something a lot more in depth with it. And we shot a lot of footage in 2001 and 2002, and then it's just, we started when we were 19. And we weren't rich, and we had to have, we had college and had to make money for ourselves, supporting ourselves. And we kept starting and stopping and, trying to gain traction. And now we finally are going to finish it. We shot another 15 hours this year, so we have a total of 50 hours and over 60 interviews, some people twice over the course of 11 years. I don't know, for me, it's important just because I've been a fan, like I said, going back for a long time, but as far as being like a fan who was like online and found out about wrestling journalism, I'd say in like the late 90s. And I feel like with wrestling, quote unquote, documentaries, it's either something that's very surface, that's like, oh, I'm an outsider and I'm going to check at this weird thing. And it doesn't get, too in depth or, treat it with enough seriousness. Or you swing the other way and you have something like WWE produced stuff, which is only going to be seen by like the biggest wrestling fans. It's really something that's produced for somebody who understands wrestling, and it has a lot more to do with like, oh, how cool was it when the Sandman did this angle with Tommy Dreamer? That's not what we're doing at all. Our documentary has almost nothing to do with like storylines, angles, characters. I mean, it tells a human story with an ensemble cast. We've interviewed, a lot of the wrestlers are in it. We tell their stories as it is appropriate within the context of the film, but there's not like one person we follow around. So yeah, we interviewed wrestlers. We've interviewed a lot of behind the scenes staff at ECW, and a lot of those people you just don't know or you haven't heard from. And that's the stuff that was interesting to me, the business, the marketing, the branding of ECW, the behind the scenes story of how it all came together. The way that they use the internet. They were the first wrestling internet company that like really caught this wave when the internet was really in its infancy in your homes. And the way they use that using fan conventions to spread the word. The way that they branded themselves, they were the first promotion that I know of that was like, oh, it's not about a top star. It's about ECW. You chant ECW. The star became kind of secondary and almost interchangeable after a while. So, I just wanted to do something that was an intelligent wrestling documentary from a wrestling fan that wrestling fans could be proud of if you're like really deep into it, but you want to be able to watch it with a friend of yours who thinks it's stupid that you like wrestling. And it just so happened that ECW was the story that I wanted, to do it about. But it's a documentary that happens to be about wrestling. It's not like I would term like something like what WWE puts out, even though it's very well produced. It's a wrestling video. It's you're not going to watch that unless you're a wrestling fan. I want to do something that could get out there to film festivals and get out to people so that like you guys could go take your non-wrestling fans and then maybe have, hopefully it sparks some intelligent discussion about it because we got so in depth with different things, with as far as violence and, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. I'm sorry to cut you off here, John, but you say it passes, it pretty much passes like the non-wrestling friend level. Does it pass the female level?
Can you sit down with your girlfriend on the couch and watch this? Is there a girlfriend mode?
Is there an option to watch it in girlfriend mode?
That's tough with ECW. I think that they'll end up liking certain people, like somebody like a Johnny Grunge or a Ted Petty or Tony Lewis, who was a very involved fan that really helped them along the way, who's somebody that we recognize. Those people are like really likable. I mean, even New Jack is likable, and we talk about how he stabbed a guy in it, in a lot of ways, I'm interested to see how a normal person, when we go to festivals, feels about New Jack after they see the whole thing. Because there are parts where he's very charming and very intelligent, and then there's other parts where you're like, whoa, that's kind of crazy, Yeah,
I sitting on my shelf is a documentary that came out. It was 101 Reasons Not to Be a Pro Wrestler. Have you seen that one?
No, I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, they interviewed a lot of guys, and one of which that they actually followed around was New Jack. And I was like, I would totally go have a drink with him. Mm-hmm. And then, halfway through the documentary, they show him in front of like 15 fans in a gymnasium wrestling a guy who's in his early to mid 50s who like hasn't wrestled since, 1976 and in a hardcore match. And what you expect to have, the fans were getting in the way saying, get out of here. You're going to kill him. Get out of here.
Yeah.
After they've been blooding him up. But,
I've met him twice and like, I don't want to test it a third time. Like I feel like I got away twice and actually had good interactions. Because when I interviewed him, he actually had a machete in a sheath on his lap.
Nice.
So like
he was armed.
What's this?
He was armed, so he had a wet person while he's talking to you.
Yeah. I mean, I brought it up right away, and I was like, "That's not in case this goes bad." And he gave me crazy eyes and a smile, and I knew we were cool then. So.
And he gave me crazy eyes and a smile, and that's when I left.
Yeah.
So I knew we were cool, and we had cookies.
Well, yeah, I figure why tempt fate? I met a lot of crazy people on this journey. You know what I mean? What a bunch to document. I mean, there's a lot of charismatic interviews in it.
Oh yeah. I mean, you've interviewed Sandman, Raven, Balls Mahoney, New Jack. Right there. I mean, that's exemplary that you managed to get these guys sitting down. One thing I want to ask you: have you seen the WWE's documentary, The Rise and Fall of ECW?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that really helped us. I was really bummed because obviously we started ours before that and had a lot of it shot and just didn't have the money or the wherewithal to take it, anywhere. And it wasn't a complete project at that point. It wasn't nearly as holistic as it became once we got more of the wrestling media and we got, the front office people and all the pieces in place. I did see it, and it's fine. Again, I go back to like the wrestling video thing. Like a lot of that has to do with angles and characters and whatnot. And when they touch on something serious, like the way they handled the Eric Koulas incident, are you guys familiar with that?
Yes, the mass transit.
Right.
The mass transit thing.
The way that they handled that in there was like, oh, New Jack beat up a kid really bad. I think that's the quote that Paul Heyman has. New Jack beat it. And there's just a lot of things that WWE doesn't handle because it doesn't behoove them. I mean, it's kind of like, if North Korea, and this is crappy because it makes them look worse than I mean, but if North Korea bought South Korea and they were making a documentary about South Korea, would you think it's the most objective thing that was put out there? It's not quite. There are things that they want to protect. They now own a brand. So
that is the best comparison ever. That's perfect. That's a perfect analogy. That's just perfect because you're absolutely right. It's like, well, that's the thing. Like when you get these documentaries, that's why I want to draw fans' attention to your documentary, because the stuff from WWE, it's going to be borderline. I mean, I don't want to say the problem is you don't want to bust out the word propaganda, but like you say, they're protecting a brand. They own ECW. They make they I don't know if they make money on merchandising or what, but that is WWE property, and it's a gray area when you talk about the mass transit incident, or if you just want to bring up New Jack in general. You're going to run into those kind of hazy areas.
There's just a lot of things in our documentary that they didn't really touch on, or they touched on but they shied away from, or they just didn't really get in depth. And a lot of that has to do with, like, we reached out to the wrestling journalists. You know, everybody who was covering ECW in the 90s, I shouldn't say everybody, the major figures who were covering ECW in the 90s as wrestling journalists are in our film. And these are guys who were talking to Paul Heyman, like, all the time during that period. And in some cases, with the torch, they were involved in the fallout of the mass transit incident and the pay-per-view almost being canceled. And we cover that. There was a bit of a blame game going on there, which I don't know that everybody knows that story, but it is covered in the film.
Oh, so okay, cool.
The journalists do a great. One thing I had a problem with wrestlers is they're very much in the present, and they don't have a lot of perspective or give a lot of context. It was just kind of like, like one wrestler was like, he told me, and this is after it had folded. This is like 4 months after it folded. In an interview with me, he was like, TNN was awesome for us. We were in a lot of homes. You know, and I was like, well, you guys are out of business, right? You know, like, they didn't support you at all from all the facts that I gathered, but, you know, they didn't pay for production. They didn't, you know, promote you. But so I went to wrestling journalists, and they really kind of give us a perspective and a context to everything that's going on in the 90s so that a normal person can understand it. And also it's pretty neat if you're a wrestling fan because you feel like you're being treated with respect and intelligence. Or at least that's the hope. I mean, because I'm like that. You know, I'm one of those people who's been a fan forever who wanted to have a smart wrestling documentary that was really in depth.
Yeah, which is exactly why, you know, we're the same way. We got so excited when we saw your documentary, and that's why we got to get this guy on. We got to get all our fans to go to the Kickstarter page, donate all their life savings to make sure this thing happens. Yeah, that's hands down for us. Now, when you look at the project, you mentioned that a lot of the wrestlers that you had, they were focused on the present. Is there anybody who you thought that was like ECW lifer? Like they were going to name their kids ECW because they just absolutely loved it. Did you talk to any wrestlers that were really like that? Where you're like, you know, this guy is company through and through.
Well, kind of. I don't know. Like when I talked to Axel Rotten the first time, he was kind of bitter about everything, but he was very intelligent. He was actually very well spoken. And the second time I talked to him was at the Extreme Reunion where we spent 3 days this year, you know, filming at their reunion show. And he was much more kind of like the company that we build. He still really didn't have much great to say about Paul Heyman, but him and Balls Mahoney, I would say, are kind of like that, but they're not quite. But I have met a guy, actually. They're one of their fans. I've met a few of them, but one of them in the 90s, I won't say the gentleman's name because that's not fair, but he was a little crazy, and he had an ECW, a really bad ECW tattoo. And he was talking about how he's angry at the company. He sold me his VHS collection. This is back when they had VHS tapes. He sold it to me when I was 16, and I met with him, and I think my mom took me to meet him, and he was just kind of crazy.
Was the tattoo self-induced? Like, did he do it himself?
Like, I don't think so, but it was. If you told me it was, I'd also believe that. You know, like. Like, they have a really distinctive logo that's all over the place. Like, even back then they did. So you could have taken that to a tattoo artist. So we either went to a really lazy tattoo artist, A, or B, it was some sort of weird interpretation of their logo. I don't know, man.
Hey, 6-year-old, here's my tattooing pen. Get to work.
And he was like 35 years old, too. I don't know.
I just love the fact that you bought VHS tapes from him. Like, you just convinced your mom to drive you all the way out there to this 35-year-old guy with an ECW tattoo, a shitty ECW tattoo, on his person. Mom, I want to buy tapes from this guy. I mean, that's just
I had to, like,
awesome.
set up a whole loan with my mom to do this. This was, like, a serious thing for me. Because I was 16, and I don't even know if I had a job yet, or I was getting a job, and I promised to pay it back. I think the guys charged me like $100 or something. Something that you could get so cheap now, but at the time, I was
a lot of money.
I need all of these I need to watch it from the beginning to the end, you know? And I met him at like a Burger King, like halfway between where he lived and where I lived. Yeah, my mom was not happy about this.
Okay, so
how does she feel about it now?
You know, I don't even know if she remembers. I hope she doesn't remember. I hope I haven't scarred her.
You don't think she's bringing it up to her friends about the time she drove her son all the way out to a Burger King so he could buy, a box full of tapes from some random dude?
Right. With a prison tattoo of ECW, yeah.
I think he was in drugs,
Really?
Cheryl.
Not kitty porn.
Yeah, who knows?
No, man, it'd be like hentai or something like that. It'd be weird. It wouldn't just be kitty porn. It'd be like tentacle kitty porn.
Stuff.
Okay, now the 800-pound gorilla in the room is Paul Heyman. From a fan's perspective, we often credit, not really myself so much, Paul Heyman for being this incredible gifted writer and a leader in the wrestling business. I would say writer, not so much leader, but that's just me. And I'm willing, here's the thing, I want to kick this to you because I want to see, I am willing to change my mind. Mike has pointed out some things to me that really opened my eyes, and I want to see what you think. Basically, he could, the IWC at large believes that he could pretty much save any bad situation. And do you feel the same feeling or adoration from those that you interviewed? I mean, kind of like the insider perspective. Do you see him? Was he kind of like that mythical character in the industry?
I think that now guys a lot more give him credit. I think when I got a lot of guys, the company had folded and he had screwed a lot of people out of money. Or at least had made a lot of big promises that he couldn't come through with. And I think they thought that they felt kind of dicked around. I mean, he doesn't always have the reputation for telling the truth,
Yeah.
So I think that they were less likely to give him credit the first time around, although a lot of them did. A lot of them were honest. I don't know that he can save every situation. I know from personal experience from studying the man for years and being a fan of what they did, I think that he can. He's very forward thinking. Like, I don't think Paul Heyman cares one bit about ECW anymore. Paul Heyman, was trying to buy into Strikeforce a few years ago, like 2007, 2008, which is an MMA promotion.
Mm-hmm.
I think he did great, smart work on SmackDown in 2002, and a lot of people can say, oh, well, they had a great crew. All you got to do is book the matches. Well, if it was that simple, then everybody would do it. You know what I mean? I think he books a certain brand of wrestling that's pretty multifaceted if given the reins to do it. I think the big test has already passed. The big test would have been if he would have gone to TNA in 2000, I guess it would have been 2009 or 2010, where there was talk of that. I think that would have been the big test. I don't ever think he'll get into a position where he'll be able to do anything creative again in wrestling. I know he's never, I would think he's never going to spend his own money again. Or his family, rather.
Yeah, I don't see him running his own company ever again. I mean, he's doing some stuff in WWE, and you can kind of see once he came into WWE, especially with the Brock Lesnar thing, you can see things were changing, and the way, like, Lesnar and Triple H's last match, like Mike and I were talking about it during the pay-per-view, SummerSlam, where the lights dimmed and they introduced it like an MMA match. I mean, that was classic Heyman. As far as, look, I mean, my thing is, I mean, it's hard for me to have this kind of discussion because it seems like whenever I bring up Heyman on the show, I don't want to say I'm vilified, but I'm clearly in the minority as far as my opinions regarding him. Being a phenomenal booker, but not so much a great, like he's not the guy you want in charge. He's the guy you want answering to the guy in charge, and that's the impression I get. Is that? Do you agree with that, or do you think that it doesn't really fit?
I think that if you can get him in a scenario, which there just won't be in modern wrestling, I just don't think this scenario would exist where it would be financially viable that Heyman would want to do it. But I think if you can let him handle creative but not own anything, and he has almost all but a little final say, I think that he could do something very interesting. I do. He can't have total final say. He can't hold on to business stuff. But I do think that he could still contribute something not perfect, but something very interesting to the wrestling landscape. I do.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Mike from PW Torch, he was the one what really opened my eyes about is that he pointed out that, see what you want about Paul Heyman. Every time he built somebody up, WWE or WCW snatched him. So he was constantly having to build up and book these guys that nobody else wanted. And he built a brand around that. And so for his faults, all of his faults, you have to look at that and go, the guy was a success when it came to that. He could take what nobody else wanted and make something of it. At least that's from the fans. At least that's from our perspective. I don't know if you look at it as a different way.
I think our film definitely speaks to that. I mean, people in it. One thing that's important to note is that there's no narration in this film. It's an oral history, you know. But so you're not really getting my opinion or my partner Kevin Kiernan's opinion. But the opinions that you'll get, I mean, there's a lot of credit given to Heyman about. We really tried to look at what were the things exactly, and not generalizations, but what were the things that Heyman did that made him unique or that got the attention of people. And again, I use the term multifaceted. I think he did so much with so little, and that's pretty, like, it's very, a lot of it's old school stuff, but he obviously had a new slant on it for the time. But he's also willing to change with the times, which I think is something that's really hard to do in wrestling, or at least keep the core of what wrestling is. People sometimes say, like, oh, 70s wrestling or something like that. 70s territorial wrestling. I heard that a lot when UFC got popular. Oh, it's quote unquote booked, just like 70s territorial wrestling. And, you know, I've only seen a little territorial wrestling from the 70s, so I can't completely speak on that. But I think the basic idea is the core values of what, you know, Booking 101 is, that isn't like a entertainment product in a goofy sense, but that presents serious fights. I think that's something that Heyman would do, is that he does with Brock Lesnar very well, the big match atmosphere. I think he built that well. He did it with Sabu and Taz in ECW. He really built that up, you know. If you look back at Sabu, I mean, he's just basically a lot of spots, you know, and Taz was like never this big guy, but he made you think he was an MMA fighter who was a giant killer, who could just kill anybody. He was a badass. You know, that's impressive. I wish they would do something like that. You know, Bryan Danielson, or I guess Daniel Bryan now, they do a decent job with him. I'm glad to see where he is, but, like, you know, they could make him a killer if they wanted to. It's all in how you present somebody.
No, that's absolutely fair. So I mean, really, the $1,000 question is obviously not now, but were you ever able to get, you know, an interview with Heyman in the past, or did he turn you down? Was it was it a non-starter?
Oh, we chased him for a while. No, you know, he doesn't sit for anybody unless it's like he's being, you know, unless it's WWE because they're his bosses and it behooves him to. No, I think Paul's, without giving away too much, like, I mean, I'm sure some people have seen the video we put out today. Paul Heyman's perspective in certain areas definitely comes out in the film. Certainly people speak to Paul, to what Paul felt and what Paul did in our film. A lot of people do. I think it's kind of interesting, you know, and I know this is kind of like a minimizing the fact that we don't have a Paul Heyman interview, but I think it's kind of interesting to do something like this where the ghost of Paul Heyman kind of hangs over it. You've got a lot of people, you know, talking about, you know, firsthand information of talking with Paul, or conjecture as to what Paul was doing, or what he was thinking. And we do have a lot of firsthand people who dealt with Paul in our film who talk about that. But it's kind of interesting to do something that you can construct without having him in it. It got to the point about 5 years ago where I had an email correspondence with him that didn't quite go, you know, anywhere. And I was just like, you know what? I'm okay with not having him at this point. I think that we can still make something valuable that doesn't necessarily need to contain a Paul Heyman interview. And I think that we're succeeding in that.
Yeah, and there is value in that. I mean, like, all right, I'm a huge Mark Twain fan, and I've read a lot of documentaries about him, or a lot of biographies about him, written by a lot of different perspectives, interviewing, going through different literature and stuff like that. And then there was one that I read that was basically like from Mark Twain's mouth, and I really wish I never read that, because once you get it from the source, all the multifaceted layers that make a figure like that up, like a Paul Heyman, or even Vince McMahon. I know for a fact a documentary much like yours, in fact, it'd be great if you did it, will be about Vince McMahon. It's gone. I mean, you're getting it from the horse's mouth, and then all that, getting the reflections of that person from another figure that interacted with them becomes so much more interesting, because it just adds these little pieces, because you know what they're saying. Yeah, it's coming through their filter, but there's a grain of truth. There's something there to what they're saying, and then it just makes such an amazing mosaic of what a person is, and you lose that when you get it directly from the source. Well,
and the other thing is that the source might not always be that truthful. Or spin things. I mean, I think
exactly.
Paul Heyman has a certain reputation for being. I mean, I studied the guy for years. I've watched a lot of tape and listened to a lot of interviews of him. He is brilliant at the way he. I mean, he's the son of a lawyer, you know, a very successful lawyer in New York City, and he knows how to position and talk to people in a certain way. He can explain away anything. He really can. So, like, you know, you're almost going into a battle of wits when you're interviewing somebody like that, and then using that material, you know, it's one of those things where, not that I would, you know, if he called me tomorrow and said, all right, you know, I'd like to do an interview, of course we would do it. You know what I mean?
All right. So, real quick, rapid fire from the live chat and from Twitter. Robert says, wants to know, what is the most surprising information about ECW that the fans may not know about? The second most surprising, because the first most surprising, you have to get the documentary. But the second most surprising thing, I think you can give that away for free, right?
Well, yeah, well, I'd have to, like, I'm, like, struggling to think of what exactly would be shocking information. But, like,
just off the top of your head. Just something that you, like, whenever you talk about it, the first thing you think of is, like, if someone says, well, what about this? And you go, you know what? This is going to blow your mind.
I think, the situation between Eddie Gilbert and Paul Heyman is interesting. That we cover in there. I mean, we start from the formation, and we cover the Gilbert, you know, the year that Gilbert was there. I think it's interesting the way that Paul, you know, kind of snuck in there but didn't. I think the story has always been that Paul stabbed his best friend in the back. I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that.
You mean like the buyout and when he got fired and that type of thing?
Well, no, Eddie Gilbert was the booker.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm thinking something else.
Are you talking about Todd Gordon? Oh,
yeah, I'm sorry.
I mean, that situation is interesting too. I think, Todd readily admits to making calls for people. That's an interesting conversation. Where he basically agrees that he made calls and tried to get into WCW, but he disagrees with the idea that he was a secret mole, which I've never quite been able to understand what the difference is. That's something.
I wasn't being secret. I was just flat out doing it.
I was in the room. No, that's fair. No, that's a really good point. It is kind of one of those things where, you know, what he said was, yeah, it's like, no, dude, you're a mole then. I mean, you were kind of going around the company's back, talking to WCW. That's kind of being a mole.
Yeah, that's an interesting situation. I think I found it interesting the end, because we've just been editing the first draft of the ending, how multifaceted, like, the end is, as far as, like, they're not being, everybody wants quick, easy information in our age. And it's like, well, what killed ECW? Was it this? Okay, good. Like, they want a one-word answer. And there's just so many things that went into it.
Yeah, which leads me into my next question, which is exactly, this is perfect. At Breaking Kayfabe on Twitter said, in the rise and fall of ECW, Vince said that Heyman used violence and edginess too much, and that's why ECW failed. You obviously disagree. You think it's more multifaceted than that?
I just think it's funny that Vince McMahon has an opinion on it. like really, like he was ever really paying that much attention to them. I don't know where he bases that opinion on. I think that they did narrowcast towards the end. I think it's a part of it. You know, I don't think that's completely off base. But I mean, when you guarantee contracts, when you have to sign guys to deals because you're losing them to the big two, so you have to promise them more money. And part of that is because pay-per-view and for possible television, you know, like before they even got the TNN deal, the pay-per-view companies were like, well, we want you to have these guys nailed down. So they have to have these long-term big contracts for, like, you know, $200,000, say. When before they were paying guys, and they could pay guys, you know, $200 a night.
Yeah.
And then where do you get that money from? Business is supposed to double if you're on pay-per-view or if you're on, you know, the idea was that business would double, I should say. That's the, you know, direct quote from Office people, was that, you know, we're going to go on TV, we're going to be on pay-per-view, and business is going to double, and merchandise will sell nationally, and all this stuff. And it really wasn't as they expanded. The other thing is that being on pay-per-view, you have to you have to have at a bare minimum $250,000 to run a pay-per-view, and that's before a lot of other costs. But they had to borrow that money, so they had to pay high interest loans because they needed such a quick turnaround on that. And the pay-per-view money wasn't coming back quickly enough. I mean, some of the pay-per-view money doesn't come back for over a year.
Yeah,
so now you have a problem there.
So they're just getting squeezed from all sides. So it was like one of those things where it was just like all these little bits, like Jenga. You just keep removing pieces, eventually it's going to fall.
And Paul Heyman didn't delegate well. They didn't have a central office, which is something that some of the office people complained to me about, that they didn't have one place. They had people working out of their houses or on cell phones. You couldn't get a hold of Paul Heyman. Again, he didn't delegate, and, and people...
Yeah, his non-delegation, it's been said that he had to have his hands in every single facet. When you get to a certain point, you just can't do that. I mean, it's just not good business sense, because not one person doesn't know everything about how to do everything, and they can't.
Well, and the other thing is, I've heard off the record that nobody would completely go on the record with this, but people did say that the deals that he signed were really crazy. They were rob Peter to pay Paul kind of deals, where it's like, okay, a video game developer came to them and he's like, he sold the rights for like $25,000 or something. I mean, that's a hearsay story, obviously, but
that's insane.
Right.
Yeah, in perpetuity. You know what I mean? Like really?
Holy crap!
Yeah.
Well, it's just Heyman always struck me as the kind of guy who whatever gets me what I want right now, and then the rest will just handle itself.
That's pretty much what I found. Yeah.
And yeah, if I had to point to like any one major thing that caused the end of ECW, it'd be kind of what you were talking about there, the whole, Heyman not delegating, just saying, okay, I'm in charge, I'm going to handle every aspect, and then people not being able to get a hold of him, and it becomes a case of the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. I mean, you have talented office people in ECW who know how to run a business that are trying to do one thing, and then over here, Paul Heyman is going in a completely different direction.
Yeah. No, that's one of those things that, like, I always heard that, like, when you're voting for president of the United States, you're basically voting for the dumbest person in the room, and that's exactly why. Because they're delegating is what they're doing. You're hiring that guy to make decisions of what a bunch of other smart people are saying. So the president is always, at any given time, the dumbest person in the room. So whenever someone doesn't believe that in a business sense, I worry. Like with Vince and WWE, the fact that he's stepping down, I think is a great thing for WWE. But that's another thing with like Paul Heyman. It's like, well, if he has to have his hands in everything, there you go. What was Oso on Twitter said? What was the one moment that made you an ECW fan, where you converted and you're like, these guys are awesome?
Oh, I think it happened somewhat gradually. Like, I look back, I know I found it on TV because I'm from Allentown, Pennsylvania. This is only, roughly an hour outside of Philly. So I got Sports Channel Philadelphia, which was their flagship channel for their syndication network, which is another thing that was killing them, was paying for TV for all those years. So they had to pay a lot of money for a lot of markets. I saw Public Enemy interviews. The early Public Enemy interviews would be like in the middle of like the ghetto, and they'd go on for like 8 minutes, and they'd go from funny to serious again. Shane Douglas's early interviews, because he was talking about Ric Flair, and at the time I was like, well, the universe has never crossed. In the early 90s, like WWE never talked about WCW, WCW never talked about WWE, and there was this promotion that was just talking about everybody. And then, there were guys, like, I knew of Shane Douglas because he had been in other promotions. I knew of Too Cold Scorpio when I saw him there. And then the characters that they had, I remember they used to do these awesome music videos for people like Sabu, or for a feud between, like, Dreamer and Raven. Their TV production really was what got me, because I've always kind of liked niche things anyway. I've always just found, like, something that I find a little bit more, give a little bit more effort to be a little bit more artistic, do a lot with a little. I really liked how almost, I don't think rustic's quite the word, but raw that their TV show was. I thought it was produced in such an interesting way, and they used all this great music that they had no right to. I guess that's one of the interesting things I can talk about, is like that they pretended for years that they had special rights to use all the music that they did. They never did. They never did, but they would go so far as to like put out press release stuff to the wrestling media about deals they made with Tommy Boy, or so they could use something in the music video, or they would put stuff on their TV show at the end about getting it. And it's, I've found no evidence whatsoever. And people I talked to said, yeah, like one of their guys said, yeah, Paul would tell me to go get a Bush CD in Times Square at 2 a.m. because we were producing TV. And he would just, go, that song would be perfect. And then they'd just go get it. So when in that period did he write to the people who own the rights? You know what I mean? Like,
and get the express written consent of
right. But he was brilliant at doing this stuff. He just acted like he belonged. He walked into a room and acted like he belonged there. You know what I mean?
Hey, if you believe you belong somewhere, that's 80% of the battle, man. Joe, you got something?
Yeah, I was just curious. I mean, after all these interviews you did, and like you said, you interviewed some people twice.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think was like the easiest person to interview, or who? I guess not easiest, but who do you think was your favorite in regards to just easy to work with in that instance?
From the media, like pretty much all of them were awesome. Mike Johnson has really good sound bites. He saved our butt a few times when we were like looking for something concise to edit. Wrestlers, there have been so many that were so cool. Like I go back to Ted Petty and Johnny Grunge were amazing. You know, it was very sad, you know, when they passed away because they were just really good people. Man, like I would say 90% of them, like Balls was great. I asked Balls for 5 minutes. I got 35. Axel was really good. You know, he was full of piss and vinegar, you know, like.
I was gonna say, was there anybody who just severely like, why the fuck are you even talking about ECW anymore?
The people who perceive themselves as stars were more difficult, I think.
Okay.
Like, Sandman was kind of tough. He was all over the place. I just think that's who he is. You know what? In hindsight, though, I think all the interviews ended up being of value. The most frustrating person was probably, because I see the question up on the screen. I don't know if he's the worst person to interview, but Raven was very difficult. Scott Levy dicked us around a lot. I mean, we had the interview set up, and then he didn't show up at the building. We were supposed to interview him before an ROH show, and then he didn't want to do it at the end of the night. He just didn't feel like it. You know, we were bending over backwards. We stayed at the whole show. You know, he didn't feel like it, so get him the next time. So we had to drive to Jersey. And then I confirmed it with him earlier in the day. He didn't show up on time again. And then we couldn't find a place to do it. He said, I'll do it after my match. That's where he had a pretty well-known dog collar match with CM Punk at one of their big shows in Jersey. I think the second year of ROH's existence. So we ended up in like a closet doing an interview with him. He's like half bloody. It's an interesting visual. But he started like telling me how to do my job, you know, like about how I would edit it later. And I'm like, dude, just talk. I'm going to edit it all. You know, he was like, you'll have to do this. And then he would start over. And then he just decided that I asked him a question that he didn't like. So he grabbed the questions from me, told me what questions that what were stupid and what that he would answer, which was like 2 more questions because he said he was getting tired. I mean, this is like 15 minutes into the interview. It's funny for the 20 minutes I got from him, it actually ended up being worth it. But for years, I was just like, you know, I cataloged all the interviews minute by minute with basic bullet points. And for years, I just refused to even catalog that interview. I was just so I was so disappointed because I had always heard what a mind he was for the business. I thought he would just have such a fascinating perspective. And you know what? In the end, I think he did, but we really had to cull the limited footage that we had to get those interesting thoughts, you know? Maybe it's my fault. I just expected, you know, more from the guy.
Well, yeah, I mean, I kind of understand that. He does seem like a smart guy. All right, John. So, if anybody needs to give you their hard-earned monies, what's the best way to reach you?
All right. Okay, yeah, we've gone this long in the interview, and I haven't really gotten to this part. Yeah, we really need closing costs on this movie. We are on Kickstarter right now. Today is the exact halfway point of our 30 days. We're trying to raise the money we need for the post-production to get it out to everybody, which includes, you know, like a lot of editing stuff and color correction and mastering of things, legal stuff, errors and omissions insurance, marketing to be able to get it out to people across the nation, film festivals, stuff like that. There's a whole bunch of things. It's all nickel and dime stuff. There's no one expenditure that's gigantic, but when you add it all up, it's a bunch of money. So please go to Kickstarter.com if you're interested in this. Search ECW. Our project will pop up with my name, John Philapavage, and it'll say a documentary about Extreme Championship Wrestling. Watch our videos. Please pledge some money because basically it's a pre-order service in a lot of ways. And there are tons of gifts if you want to give more money. Basically, for everything you pledge, you're getting something, including early access to stuff we have on our backers page. For the last week, we've had a segment out there, which is something raw that we put together, which is like 6 minutes about the violence in ECW. $30 gets you the DVD, a movie poster, I think a sticker, and the access to the behind the scenes stuff, and it just goes up from there. So
yeah, you get some great pledge goals on here. My favorite is the $10,000 one, where you could have someone like Stevie Richards or Blue Meanie in your house talking ECW while you watch the movie. I just think that would just be the best $10,000 I think you could ever possibly spend.
We made sure to get the safe people, you know?
Yes.
It's all people that I would have in mind, because, dude, I got to travel with these people, so, you know.
No New Jack.
No, they said, you know who would do that? And I was like, nah, like I said, I already went through it twice. I got out clean. I'm good.
Don't want to be stuck on an airplane with them.
Was it hard to get Stevie Richards to not talk about tech?
Oh, no, he was so excited to talk to us because he was asking us about our editing software, our equipment, and...
He is such a nerd.
Yeah.
So awesome.
And his show, his video cast that he does is actually really entertaining.
I know, right?
It's amazing. He's an awesome guy, yeah. I wish I was more into tech, so...
Yeah, it's just one of those things where I remember Joe tossed it my way, and I was like, oh, okay, this is gonna be one of those video blog things where it's gonna be low rent and everything. That guy knows his shit. I was really happy to see that, because it's interesting when you see these guys with their hobbies and what they're really interested in. Besides that, it's like weird. It's like finding out that like some senator is really into like Magic the Gathering. You're like, really? I mean, like just hardcore. So
nerd.
Yeah.
And it's nice. And it's nice to run into a tech nerd who can beat the shit out of you.
Yes, that too. Yes.
but he wouldn't. I mean, he's
in Dixie shorts.
Yeah,
yes.
Daisy Dukes. One thing I got to say, guys, is if we do not reach the Kickstarter goal, you do not get charged, but we also do not get any money, you know? So it's really important that we reach our goal. If we don't, though, it's safe. Amazon Payments handles Kickstarters. Kickstarter's a pretty mainstream site now. That helps artists of all kinds get funded. It's safe. It's easy. You know, please support us. I really want to put out something cool and intelligent and complete, you know, about wrestling and a subculture, which is just interesting. The study of a subculture in itself. So
yeah, you really should support it. The reason the instant that I absolutely that I wanted you on the show was when you said it was a subculture of a subculture, which is such a brilliant way of putting it. So, John, thank you so much for being on. We're going to be posting a link to the Kickstarter on our Facebook page as well as in the show notes on YouTube, so you can hit them up there. Right now, you're just sitting at about half with 15 days, well, a little bit under half with about 15 days to go.
Time schedule. We're at 40%. I just got it.
Yeah, these things tend to spike at the end, though. So anybody and everybody, you got a friend, you got a rich uncle, whatever, head to Kickstarter.com, definitely search for the ECW documentary, and just give them whatever you can. Give them a little bit of scratch, because this is something that, look, let's be honest, this is going to be one of those things that it's probably never going to happen. With such a tight lid that WWE has on all these guys, and with TNA, and no one wants to say anything, I firmly believe this kind of documentary will never happen again. So we gotta support these guys. We gotta support the Kickstarter support. Just get out there, give as much as you can, as little bit as you can, because it's something that we as fans made ECW what it is, and we really should give back to that and allow it to live on in a capacity that isn't being produced by Vince McMahon and his cadre of guys at WWE. I mean, let's be honest.
And you get to own it. You get to own
exactly. You get to say that I helped fund this, and how awesome is that?
Yeah.
Oh, John, thank you so much for being on, buddy. Really appreciate it, especially with your busy schedule. I know next up you got a red carpet date with Angelina Jolie, so I want to thank you so much for being on here. Let us know, Mr. Hollywood, that we appreciate you being on the show. So good luck. Good luck with Kickstarter. Hope you exceeds your wildest expectations, and you can retire within the next month on this thing.
And if you do this one, get this one funded and completed and out. You might want to try and tackle WCW, because I know WWE did a horrible job with their Rise and Fall.
That documentary was so bad.
At least their ECW one was interesting, but the WCW one was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
So you know.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me and giving me the platform to talk. You know, and I hope people see my passion for this, and they want to help out, I mean, this would mean the world to me. I want to give you guys a good product. So thank you guys for having me.
Oh, thank you, John.
man.
All right, now normally, right now, we'd be doing pay-per-view predictions, seeing that TNA No Surrender is this Sunday. However, but with the interview with John, we're going to push that to Thursday. So we have our Thursday directly after Impact, 10 p.m. Our our closeout show where we react to Impact and talk about the pay-per-view. Pre-show is going to be Thursday at 10 p.m. live, ftwlive.com. Definitely check it out. It's going to be awesome. But first off, we're going to do Ask FTW. This is the 30-second. Switch them up. You ask questions, we have the answers. First up, Barrett534. Guys, with what do you think about if the commentators swap around halfway through the show, it wouldn't get dry? P.S. Love the show. Joe, what do you think? What if the commentators swapped halfway through the show?
I don't like it. I like the show having a specific flavor all the way through. Because then you're like, well, then you end up wondering, like, oh, what did Booker T want to know, or what would he have said in this match? Probably shucky ducky quack quack, but no.
Rob, what do you think? Commentator swapping around?
I'm with Joe on this one. You've got to pick a pair of commentators and just stick with them. I mean, even if the commentators are subpar, like Tenay and Taz, you stick with them through the whole show and just kind of deal with it.
I don't know. First I was with you guys on this one, but the more I think about it, the more I think it'd be kind of interesting to do it division by division. And the only place I could think of that really work would be TNA, where you would have, like, Taz and TNA would be your mainstays, but then you would have your X division commentators, then your Knockouts division commentators, and then you would have, like, that interesting dynamic where it would be hopefully X division guys or X, Knockouts that would be in there giving their color commentary on it, or something like that, where they could, I don't think you really have to have an entire team change, but maybe have it for each division coming in, that you can have one person in. The only problem with that is it's a live show. And you're talking about moving a lot of people around. That's a lot of stuff to have to handle on a live show. So I'm not against the idea, but I'm not sure how it would work. Gary wanted us to know, with CM Punk joining forces with Paul Heyman, can you see another dangerous alliance forming with Punk, Heyman, and Brock and all joining forces? And who would be next to join forces with Paul Heyman if not Brock Lesnar? Joe.
I could see the entire conglomeration joining up, but who would be the next? That's a really tough question. You could almost say Daniel Bryan, but I'm going to say Devon. I think we're going to see Devon jump back over to WWE.
Really?
Yeah, and then you're going to have more of a little bit of an ECW stable going on there with the addition of Brock, because Paul had so much pull with him. Okay.
Rob, what do you think?
Well, I think Joe's stoned if he thinks Devon's going back to WWE.
That's harsh.
Outside of that, Kane. Kane would be a good addition to Heyman and CM Punk and Brock Lesnar.
My problem with this is every time Paul Heyman teams up with somebody, everybody throws out the idea of an alliance or some kind of stable or something like that. I don't think WWE is ever going to do that again. It becomes too unwieldy and it's too much of a hassle. I think it's kind of an old school kind of an aspect of things. And as far as teaming with Punk and Heyman, I don't know. I mean, Dolph Ziggler would be kind of interesting. Chat's saying Seth Rollins, Zach, Dolph Ziggler, Colt Cabana. Garvin says Dean Ambrose, which would be interesting to say the least.
But the problem, but the reason
Wake
why
up,
you're
Rob.
probably
I'm sorry, Rob. Are we boring you with our podcast?
But the reason you're probably right on this, Harrison, is the fact that once you start building anything that could conceivably be a ECW stable, the fans are going to start chanting ECW, and that's not good when your product is WWE.
Yeah, there's nothing that they would hate more than, the idea of a crowd chanting ECW. Probably, I can just only imagine how much it raises Vince McMahon's blood pressure. I mean, Goldberg alone is bad enough, but ECW would just put him over the moon. All right, time for Win Fail.
Women wrestlers aren't getting paid? Why do you do a job?
Here is your win.
You do any job,
and fail
is to fucking get paid!
of the week.
Wins of the week. Go, Rob.
My win of the week is going to be the match between Samoa Joe and AJ Styles from Impact. These guys had a epic match.
Okay. Joe, your win of the week.
If you watched Raw during the main event when it got taken to the outside of the ring, and it'd be the camera side, right side of the ring, there's a guy dressed as Macho Man in like the WrestleMania 7 white, or is it 7 or 8, the white jacket with the white tassels when he fought the Ultimate Warrior. The guy was done up so well. That's my win of the week, man. Macho Man being at Raw.
Finally, we got Macho Man on Raw. My win of the week is, Miz during commentary was really awesome, but specifically during the Cesaro-Santino match. He said, and I love it so much, Jake the Snake never ran around with a sock puppet. He just punched people in the mouth and DDT'd them. That was awesome. It was just, and he was like mumbling it. It wasn't like he said it loud enough to like overhear the crowd or anything. He just kind of said it. He's like he was bitter at, Santino running around with a sock puppet. Chad saying Miz on commentary. CM Punk whooped the King's ass and kicked Dead in the face. Well, the kick was kind of a botch, but yeah, that was pretty awesome. Ziggler winning against Orton and AJ Max. Actually, yeah, I want to throw that in there too. Ziggler clean win against Orton. You can't. That's pretty awesome. I mean, you gotta love that. Our fails of the week. Your fail of the week, Joe.
My fail of the week is Santino matches. We need a break. We need a break from Santino. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting tired of him too, man. Just ever since the sock puppet falls in love, it just, we've jumped the shark.
No, we jumped the cobra.
God damn you. Rob, what was your fail of the week?
It's hard to really pick a fail, but if I had to come up with anything, I'd have to say it was probably the Aces and Eights thing to end Raw or Impact. It was pretty much just like we talked about earlier, just a repeat of last week, and that kind of sucked.
Yeah,
I actually have another fail. It's the fact that you couldn't finish that damn Boddingtons in Wrestling with Beer.
That tasted like shit, dude.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, I even tried to drink another Grolsch the other day, and that was painful. But you know what? I did it.
I have a second fail. My second fail would go to Google Hangouts for not letting me in that fucking thing.
What happened? It wasn't even just you. It was like, yeah, Google Hangouts did not like us on Saturday. My fail is Raw. It was just a forgettable show, except for like 3 things. It was 3 hours. 3 hours. Ugh. Of this. It's just like, it's starting to like, yeah. They got to tighten up the booking. Fails from the chat. Santino's mullet. Yeah, really. Layla on commentary. Fake AJ, Vicky, and no Bobby Roode. AJ not nailing Vicky with a chair. Yeah, really. What was up with that? And there's finally a Divas match that lasted more than 90 seconds, and Layla and Miz completely ignored it and argued throughout. Yeah, you gotta love that. Alright, so that is it. That's the show. Check out ftwpodcast.com for more information about us and how to get involved in tonight's show as well as upcoming shows. Definitely look for that link for the Kickstarter for the ECW documentary. Again, thank you, John Philapavage, for being on. Awesome. Really wishing you luck on that, buddy. If you go to the website, there's a support tab where you can click on that. Then you can donate, buy merch, as well as links on how to rate us on iTunes and Stitcher and stuff like that. We accept no less than 4 stars. We're not some rickety podunk, wrestling podcast. We are a 4-star and above wrestling podcast. Thank you, everyone in the live chat. You are the hive mind. Without you, this show would be tank and terrible. We record every FTW podcast episode on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, and since Lee's not on, I don't have to say Greenwich Mean Time, at ftwlive.com. Check us out Thursday at 10 for our Impact reaction show and No Surrender preview show. Should be a lot of fun. Looking forward to see you guys next time, and go Team FTW. Suck it, team listeners. Later, guys.